Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Data Summit topic, Census Bureau Data for Librarians. We're delighted to have you with us today in what is the next installment of the Census Bureau's 2021 Data Summit series. My name is Lindy Studs, and I am your host for today. Before I go into the agenda, I'd like to cover some basic information and house rules. First, this session is being recorded. This summit will be recorded for the benefit of attendees and other stakeholders who are unable to be present. For those who do not wish to be recorded, please take this time to opt out and drop from the session. Because of the number of participants on this webinar, everyone has been muted. We encourage everyone to utilize the chat box. We will not be able to answer all questions due to the volume of participants. So any general questions that are not answered, please refer those to ask.census.gov. For any other inquiries regarding apportionment or redistricting, please reach out to our Public Information Office by emailing pio@census.gov. For your convenience and future reference, please expect a PDF of today's presentation and a resource sheet in 2 business days. Again, this webinar is being recorded and will be available at a later date. So what is the objective of the Data Summit? Designed for the novice data user, the series will present a high-level overview of several data products and demonstrate how they can be used to assist organizations and businesses identify data-driven solutions to challenges. Learn about how your responses to Census Bureau surveys are used to create publicly available data products. At the conclusion of this session, you will have an increased awareness of the vast data products available through the U.S. Census Bureau. You'll be better equipped to utilize some of the free online tools available on census.gov, and you'll have resources and toolkits to assist with navigating data available on our website. We've offered these summits to thank our many committed 2020 Census partners by showing them that the value of partnership extends beyond the decennial count. Census Bureau data can help organizations make data-driven decisions. Today's summit is one example of how the Census Bureau also offers support to help you with accessing and understanding these data. Today, we will hear opening remarks from 2 wonderful Census partners, Joseph Koskovsky from the Federal Depository Library Program and Phyllis Gorshi from the Florida Library Association. Then, we will hear from our key presenter and subject matter expert, An Nguyen, and we'll conclude today's session with a Q&A and a brief wrap-up. Before I turn it over to Joseph and Phyllis to begin the presentation, I'd like to provide a high-level update on the 2020 census. The Census Bureau released the first results from the 2020 census on April 26, 2021. As you know, every 10 years, the Census Bureau takes account of every person living in the United States as required by the Constitution. Our goal is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. This national head count is used to distribute the 435 memberships, or seats, in the U.S. House of Representatives among the 50 states based on the state apportionment population counts from the census. These first results from the 2020 census included 3 data tables of population counts for the nation and each of the 50 states. The first table was on the apportionment population counts. These are the counts used for apportionment. They include the resident population for each of the 50 states, plus each state's overseas population count. The second was a resident population count. These are the counts of all the people who are living in each state as of April 1st, 2020. Lastly, the overseas population counts. These included each state's overseas population count. Overseas population counts are only used for apportionment, and they include military and civilian employees of the U.S. government who are stationed or assigned outside of the 50 states and the District of Columbia on April 1st, 2020. And their dependents living with them overseas. who could be allocated to a home state based on administrative records from the employing federal agencies. We also published residential population counts for the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. However, their populations are not included in the apportionment population because they do not have voting seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. For more information on apportionment, including links to our latest updates and informational materials, visit the apportionment press kit available on census.gov. After the census, shifts in population and congressional representation among the states require the redrawing of district boundaries within states. The Census Bureau provides states with the local area population counts that they need to redraw or redistrict their congressional and other legislative boundaries. The redistricting data includes counts of population by race, ethnicity, voting age, housing occupancy status, and group quarters populations, all at the census block level. Due to modifications to processing activities, COVID-19 data collection delays, and the Census Bureau's obligation to provide high-quality data, states are expected to receive redistricting data by August 16th, and the full redistricting data with toolkits for ease of use will be delivered by September 30th. And the Census Bureau will notify the public prior to releasing the data. For more information on redistricting, including links to geographic support products such as maps, tables, and files, visit the Redistricting Press Kit on census.gov. And again, any media-related inquiries should be referred to our Public Information Office by emailing pio@census.gov. For all other data inquiries, please call 301-763-INFO or visit ask.census.gov. Our first speaker today is Joseph Koskovsky. He is an outreach librarian at the U.S. Government Publishing Office, working with the Federal Depository Library Program. Joe has worked for GPO since 1985 in a number of FDLP-related positions, and since 2012 in his current position as outreach librarian. In addition to working with FDLP libraries, Joe has hosted many webinars for GPO's FDLP Academy, many of those with Census Bureau staff, including a number of 2020 census-related webinars. Mr. Koskovsky, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Joe Koskovsky, Outreach Librarian at the U.S. Government Publishing Office. You may be familiar with the Federal Depository Library Program, or FDLP as we call it. Briefly, GPO sends federal government publications to FDLP member libraries in exchange for the libraries allowing free access to anyone to those publications. We're also offering more and more publications online, and currently there are 1,114 libraries of all types in the FDLP, some dating back to the 1800s. And I think many in this audience are probably from libraries in the FDLP. Most of the major college and university libraries are in the FDLP, as well as the major public libraries, state libraries, almost all the accredited law schools, many court libraries, federal agency libraries, all the service academies, including many smaller libraries also. Now, GPO and the Federal Depository Library Program have always worked very closely with the Census Bureau. Census Bureau print publications and online information have always been some of the most important sources of federal government information for our FDLP libraries and librarians. For example, one of my GPO colleagues used to work at the University of Maryland College Park McKeldin Library. That's one of our 46 regional libraries that must accept all the publications that we offer from GPO. And she mentioned to me that they had all the decennial censuses in her library back to 1790, which I thought was very impressive. And that's the case at a number of other depositories in our system. The depository coordinator at the University of Central Florida, John Hyatt Library, mentioned to me when I talked about this webinar today, said that federal depository libraries exist to provide services to their communities, and that includes providing service to other libraries and librarians. Many of the federal depository librarians have a great deal of experience working with the print and electronic census materials in their collections, and they may comprehend local nuances in the data. Please consider reaching out to your nearby federal depository librarians. And as mentioned in the introduction, Census, we have a training called the FDLP Academy. Census has presented many webinars for us, for our academy, much more so than any other agency. And as mentioned, Kathy Hartz of the Census Bureau has presented 3 webinars for us on the Census 2020 and over the last year. And I'm going to be scheduling with Kathy a final wrap-up webinar about the wrap-up of Census 2020. Moreover, our FDLP librarians and libraries have always assisted in promoting the census over the years, including Census 2020. We have 176 public libraries in the FDLP who are especially good at that promotion. So I'd like to conclude by saying that the Census Bureau has been and should always be one of the most important partners with GPO and the FDLP. We in the FDLP community greatly appreciate their outstanding efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koskovsky, for your words. For part 2 of our opening remarks, I'm happy to introduce Phyllis Gorshi from the Florida Library Association. Phyllis is the Library Director of the Dunedin Public Library and incoming President of the Florida Library Association. She has been a librarian with the City of Dunedin since 2000. She earned her MLS degree at the University of South Florida School of Library and Information Science. She has her BA in English Literature from Loyola University of New Orleans. Introducing Ms. Phyllis Gorshi.
Great, thank you, Lindy. Good afternoon, I'm Phyllis Gorshi, Library Director at the Dunedin Public Library and incoming President of the Florida Library Association. The Florida Library Association, FLA, is a statewide organization that promotes excellence in Florida libraries by advocating strongly for libraries and providing high-quality professional and leadership development for a diverse community of library staff, volunteers, and supporters. FLA is proud to represent more than 875 members, including library staff, students, institutions, friends groups, and supporters. In fact, the Florida Library Association is hosting their hybrid annual conference next week, May 19th and 20th. Working in a public library, I know how important census information is to libraries. Prior to the 2020 census, the library was a job recruitment site for census workers, and trainings were held at our libraries. In addition, libraries did outreach and promotion to get our community to complete the census. Most importantly, the library was a location for those without computers or internet at home to complete their census information online. As we work on grants and funding for our libraries, the demographic information from the census is vital. Federal funding to libraries is directly affected by the census through population numbers. It is also very important to the schools in our community for funding such as Title I, free and reduced meals, and teacher support. And for those of us that love genealogy, the census is an incredible resource for research. The U.S. has collected data about its population since 1790, and the census website has publications related to the census data collected from 1790 to 2010. There are a multitude of resources available on census.gov that can help our patrons, students, and staff. The Florida Library Association is proud to be a co-anchor to this summit to give librarians additional resources and professional development. Thank you to census.gov for having us partner, and now I would like to turn it over to Lindy.
Thank you, Phyllis. And we thank you, Joseph, and all of our wonderful 2020 census partners for your unwavering dedication to ensuring a complete and accurate count. Now, allow me to introduce our key presenter for today's summit, An Nguyen. An has been a partnership specialist and data dissemination specialist since 2008 and is based out of Atlanta, Georgia, and currently covers the states of Georgia and Florida. An immigrated to the United States from Vietnam in 1992 and is a graduate of Cornell University. An works widely with many organizations throughout the 7-state Atlanta region. He's a frequent guest speaker at local government events, academic symposiums, business conferences, and expos as he conducts census data presentations, workshops, and outreach. An served as chair of board of directors for Boat People SOS Atlanta, which is a national nonprofit community-based organization. And he received the Community Champion Award, recognized by the Georgia Asian Complete Count Committee and presented by the late Congressman John Lewis in 2011. Now, we will begin the data portion of our presentation. An, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lindy, for the nice introduction. And thank you, Ms. Phyllis Gorshi and Mr. Joseph Koskovsky for kindly co-hosting the event and for your remarks about your services to the communities and the many uses and benefits of the census data. And good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is An Nguyen. And sometimes people call me Luke, and that is perfectly fine too. Now, libraries play both important civic and educational roles in our communities. And libraries' involvement with the Census Bureau and its data collection will continue well after the 2020 census. And we would like to thank all of you, librarians, and your patrons for your partnership support and advocacy for the 2020 census, making sure that we as a nation achieve our complete and accurate 2020 census count. Now, as information experts, library staff can help patrons to understand and access statistical information and, of course, census data. Our objective today is to provide you with an overview of some key census surveys and programs and products and data tools. And in particular, we are going to briefly explore the data.census.gov tool to access census data. Then I will be providing you with some further information on how to request customized presentations and workshops via our Census Academy program, as well as connecting with our team of data dissemination specialists serving you across the country. Now, the mission of the Census Bureau is to serve the nation's leading provider of quality data about its people and economy. We are part of the Commerce Department and is the federal government's largest statistical agency. We are dedicated to providing current facts and figures and data about America's people, places, and economy. Federal law protects the confidentiality and all the information that the Census Bureau collects. Let's take a look at the history of the census briefly. As you know, the US Constitution requires only that the decennial census be a population count, beginning with the first census of 1790. Now, but as the country grows, so is the growing need for useful information about our population and economy. By the turn of the century, most of the demographic, agriculture, and economic segments of the decennial census began collecting information on hundreds of topics. And as the United States continued to grow and change, the Census Bureau continues to evolve and modernize as well. And the Census Bureau has contributed significantly to the field of technology and statistical science. Did you know that April 16 is National Library Day? And every year, the Census Bureau actually publishes a feature story on library statistics to celebrate this occasion. And did you know that the Census Bureau also collects the public library survey data for the Institute of Museum and Library Services, who then provides statistics on the status of public libraries in the United States. Now, according to the survey, the 2017 Public Library Survey, there were 9,045 public libraries being surveyed, and with more than 16,000 branches and outlets. And did you know that the report also shows that there were more than 1.3 billion public library visits in the United States on the survey year. That is about 4 times the size of the population of the United States. Now, in addition to that, the American Community Survey, the 2019 American Community Survey, estimated about 140,000 librarians and Census Bureau more than 130 monthly, quarterly, and annual surveys each year and every year. So as you know, besides the Decennial Census everybody knows about, the Census Bureau conducts other demographic surveys, financial, economic surveys, and censuses. Now, some of these surveys are conducted for many other federal agencies, and some of these sponsors agencies are the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who then publish the unemployment rate data that a lot of you know about. And the Census Bureau actually doing the legwork and collect the data for that. And did you know also that the Census Bureau conducts the State Library Survey and the Academic Libraries Survey for the National Center for Educational Statistics? So there's a lot of things going on in the intercensus years between the decennial censuses. And that keeps us busy, and we continue to produce
Your audio is cutting out. Can you try to rectify
because for
that?
me,
Hello, On.
yes,
Your audio has been cutting in and out. Whatever you can do to make it more stable.
that's probably the internet connection.
Okay.
It's been stable for the past
Just
few
wanted
days.
to-
I don't know what's going on.
All right. Just wanted you to be aware that you've been going in and out.
Okay, I'm aware of that. I will thank you. As you know, data is a form of communication, and all of us, since the time when we were little, we have been working with numbers, right? Now, anecdotal evidence needs reliable data to substantiate its content, but sometimes the numbers alone would not cut through. The number would not help to tell better stories. And one would wonder how they would go about using the data to construct one's narrative or substantiate one's argument or make the story stick. So I think the America cow stories are the many wonderful ways for us to share the way the Census Bureau telling story using statistics. And we feature timely stories with statistics on various topics such as families, housing, employment, business, education, emergency management, and lately COVID-19 pandemic. So through these real-time stories, real-life stories, we understand how and which census data are being used to feature, to contextualize, or to highlight stories. And I really encourage you to subscribe to this feature. Libraries can embed these stories into your website. And hopefully through this understanding of how census data could be used to tell stories, especially with grant writers to you will be inspired to emulate, adapt, or enhance your own stories. How's my audio going so far?
It's been much more stable. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, as Phyllis mentioned earlier, the Census Bureau also provides data for genealogy research. Now, historic census records are one of the best sources of information for research about a particular person, an ancestor, a family, or the historical context. Now, detailed records may be different for each census, but in general, you can find information that might include name, age of census day, place of birth, street address, occupation, parents' birthplaces, marriage status, number of children born and still living, and even immigration dates. Now, keep in mind that the Census Bureau respects your privacy and protects your confidentiality by law. So the Decennial Census records are confidential for 72 years to protect respondents' privacy. And you can see individual census records from 1790 to 1940 are maintained by the National Archives, not the Census Bureau. The National Archive actually released the 1940 population census records on April 2nd of 2012. And you would expect records from the 1950 census would be released on April 1st of 2022. And you can access the records at the National Archive facilities nationwide through its public access computers, as well as on your personal computers via the internet. Now, as far as the Census Bureau is concerned, individuals may request their own records before they're even publicly available via the Census Bureau Age Search Service. This service provides individual information from censuses that are still protected by that 72-year rule, but only to the named person, his or her heirs, or legal representatives. There is a congressionally mandated $65 fee for this service, and individuals interested in requesting a search of their personal census records must complete a Form BC 600 application for census records. Now, at this point, I want to bring a few notes to your attention. First, the ACS, the American Community Survey, also gathers data on self-reported ancestry, whether or not the respondents were born in the United States. Now, the historical census documents that might contain outdated terminology or views, which reflecting the author's attitudes or that of the period in which the item or the article was written. The language may be considered to be inappropriate or offensive today. And thirdly, many states conducted their own censuses as well, and some of these censuses dated back to the colonial time. So also the National Archives may have some of these records. I would encourage you to contact your state and local archives to inquire more about the state census holdings. All right. One of the many subjects of being frequently asked were the race and ethnicity. As you know, since the first census in 1790, the Census Bureau has collected information on race and ethnicity, and the census form has reflected changes in society and shifts that have occurred in the way that the Census Bureau classifies its race and ethnicity. As you can see, I can show you an example here on the right-hand side, a copy of how race and ethnicity is being reported on the 2010 census, for example. Now, today, the Census Bureau collects race and ethnicity data following the U.S. Government Office of Management and Budget guidelines. And these data are based upon self-identification. Also, keep in mind that in the United States, the racial categories generally reflect a social construct of race. And it is not an attempt to define race biologically, anthropologically or genetically. Now, you know the usefulness of collecting data on race and ethnicity, because these data are required for federal, state, and tribal programs and are critical factors in the basic research behind numerous policies and civil rights movement even. Now, race data are used in planning and funding government programs and that funds or services for specific groups, or for evaluating government programs and policies and making sure they are fairly and equitably serve the needs of all the racial groups, and for monitoring compliance with anti-discrimination laws, regulations, and policy. And some states, and actually most of the states now, also use these race data to meet legislative redistricting requirements. The Census Bureau has been published a series of reports on race and ethnicity coming out from the 2010 census, as I shows in the example here. And I would expect that you will see similar products coming out from the 2010 census. You can check these out from the census website. Now, talking about race concept, it's important for us to know, especially librarians, to know that when it comes to ethnicity, we are talking about two categories. Either one is Hispanic or Latino, or one is not Hispanic or Latino. Now, when it comes to identifying your race categories, the Office of Management and Budget standards allow respondents to identify themselves based on 5 major racial categories, which are American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islander, and white. Now, the Census Bureau also allows the use of the category some other race, which is fascinating. That seems to be is trending up. And I think one of the reports that I saw was talking about some other race seems to be the category or the third largest racial group going on in the United States. Now, talking about on the topic of race and ethnicity, please join us again for an expanded presentation on this subject at our upcoming Data Summit Series event titled Data About Race, Ethnicity, and Ancestry, which is going to be offered online through this webinar series on May 20th. There's another fascinating program I just want to briefly introduce to you. It's called the Statistics in School program, which offers free digital resources that I think librarians can use to encourage children to explore census data. We have something available for everyone, including fun facts activities, maps, news articles, videos, games, infographics, and data visualization, and some data tools that reveal population statistics by sex, by age, by ethnicity, and race. And I would encourage you, please visit the Statistics in School website and explore more that we have to offer. Now, coming back to the Decennial Census, you've seen the previous slide that were reported, the Census Bureau reported.
We lost your audio again.
Communities, and libraries federal funding. There are about 320 federal programs that rely on data derived from the Decennial Census to geographically distribute more than $675 billion in federal funding annually. And the Decennial Census counts also serve as a baseline for annual population estimate programs. And this is why some of you, most of libraries seeing the importance of the decennial census and help us to get a full and complete count, because that baseline is important. It's going to affect communities and libraries for the next 10 years. So, but that baseline going to be used to, that baseline number and the population estimates number going to be used to allocate funding to states and local governments. And as we're speaking now, even the data being used to in the for funding under the CARE Act, for example. All right. Now, as far as data is concerned, I'd like to point out a few things about the decennial census that you can see here from the 1790 to 1930 censuses, all households got one form. And then from 1940 to 2000 censuses, all households got a short form, and then 1 out of 6 households got a long form. And since the 2010 census, all households got a short form only. Now, by short form, I mean the decennial census asking only 10 questions on topics such as age, sex, relationship, Hispanic or Latino origin, race and ethnicity, number of people living in housing unit, and housing tenure. Now, since the decennial census is being conducted every 10 years, its data is being considered 100% or complete data. Another way to understand it is that the census questionnaires are being sent out to more than 140 million households across the country. That is considered 100% or complete data, which distinguishes itself as different. Right? But in particular, the American Community Survey, which I will go in briefly. Now, the decennial census also shows the data at one point in time. For example, April 1st of the census year shows the snapshot of the US population on the census year. Now, the data is also available at the block level and is considered as the official population count. But what about some other social economic statistics that we want to know about our population or about the community that we serve? Have you thought about how and why new roads and schools and after-school programs and hospitals are built in communities? And what make communities more attractive to new businesses or tourists? Or as one study is reported, 2/3 of Americans live within 2 miles of a public library. So, the answers often lie in the numbers, the number that reflect our community and how the community look like, how our communities have changed, and how our communities impact our daily lives. So the largest sample survey that collect data, social economic data, characteristic of the population is the American Community Survey. It's the most current, reliable, and accessible data source for ongoing monthly, and it is ongoing monthly every year, and it samples about 3.5 million randomly selected households across the country. Now, the ACS provides 1-year estimates for all the states as well as for cities, counties, and metropolitan areas with a total population of 65,000 or more. So keep that in mind if you are serving or looking for data for an area of 65,000 or more of population, and you will get a 1-year estimate for that. The ACS also provides the 1-year supplemental estimates for smaller population area and a 5-year estimate for all the geographies down to the block group level, even those with very small populations. Now, what data topics that the ACS cover? Now, if you see the items in red are also the data topic that were being collected on the decennial census. But the American Community Survey then provides multiple types of data profiles and table as well. And you can, but in terms of topic, and you can see here, you get a lot more on social, economic, and housing characteristics of the population. There's the point I want to point out to you when you're using the data, there's a difference between the ACS and the every 10-year decennial census. For example, the ACS is a sample estimate, right? Based on the 3.5 million samples versus official counts of the decennial census, which survey the total entire population of more than 140 million households. The ACS collects data on social, economic, and housing characteristics, while the decennial census provides basic demographics and population. Right? The ACS now being collected monthly and yearly, and the decennial census being conducted once every 10 years. The ACS shows data and or characteristics collected data over a period of time. So it shows characteristics, trends of, over time, rather one point in time as it comes to the decennial census. There's another, I think, useful survey which you can get the data from, which is called the American Community Survey, which is the most comprehensive national survey that is sponsored by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And the purpose of this survey is to provide up-to-date information about the quality and the cost of housing, the physical condition, finance, maintaining of homes, and characteristics of people who are living in these homes. And these statistics inform decisions that might affect housing opportunities for people, for example, of all income levels and ages and racial and ethnic groups. And when it comes to business and economic data, the economic census, which is being conducted once every 5 years with the years ending in 2 and 7, and it serves as the cornerstone of the nation's economic statistics that are important for industries and business and for communities. And government agency, trade association, chamber of commerce, and businesses rely on this information for economic development, business decision, and even strategic planning. Now, the information collected from this economic census include 950 detailed industry, 18 industrial sectors, and then you will get the total number of business establishments, revenue, business activity, number of employees, even the characteristics of business owners, where minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, or owned by some racial groups, for example. And then you learn more about the workforce. The economic census data continues to be released on a flowing basis. And one of the many ways the Census Bureau disseminates this information is to produce the State Fun Fact series. As you see here, the graphic on the bottom right-hand corner here, you see a visualization of the administrative and support and waste management and remediation industry in the state of Florida, which reported more than 1 million employees. Before I go into showing you some of the essential data keys to access the census data, there's one more important concept that I want to get across with you, which is census geography. Because as you know, the Census Bureau is the geographic data steward for the federal government. And over the decades, the Census Bureau has developed a variety of statistical geographies that include census tracts, block groups, block census designated place. Now, these boundaries, keep in mind, are created and maintained by the Census Bureau for statistical purposes only. And they are different. They are different from administrative geographies, which are geographies, boundaries that for legal geographies that can be changed at the will of the governing body, whether it's a city mayor or county judge or group of county commissioners. I want to quickly point out here the geographic hierarchy diagram and shows the relationship between these many different geographic entities, because it's important for you to understand geographies before you will actually go into census.gov to access the data. And the illustration on the right, for example, showing this kind of nesting relationship between the geographic entities. And And that's, we're going to go through some of the search scenario and exploring this kind of geographies from the census. Now, it's interesting to know that some research studies actually use census tracts and block group population to measure a library service area and then measure the effective of the library service. In some cases, libraries serve, some libraries might serve multi-county or multi-city areas, service areas that overlap one another, which, by the way, explains why sometimes you see a library's total population of legal service area may be larger than the actual census population estimates. Now, and then finally, most libraries get the population estimates from their state data center, whom we also work closely with. But you can also get the population figure from the Census Population Estimates Program or from the demographic profile table, for example, which I will show you during the demo session. All right. So moving on to, so what are the key essential data that you can use to access the census, the vast variety of census data. Now, on the census website, you will see there are many tools, data tools that are suitable for different needs and skill levels. But for the sake of time and for today's presentation, I'd like to go over some of the most popular and frequently used tools. And the most popular and frequently used tool based on our data analytics is QuickFacts. And QuickFacts data access tool, this tool provides you with easy access to basic information, business, geography, statistics for all states and counties, and city and towns with more than 5,000 people. So keep that population threshold in mind when you use QuickFacts. And this tool, however, is appropriate for user with any skill level. And you can see here, you can find the population estimates from here as well. Now, for example, you can simultaneously select up to 6 geographies at a time to view and compare data. And you can choose a geography to view the map, or you can select the dashboard feature to get a table, charts, and bars and map all at in one page. Right. There have been efforts across the United States to strengthen the role of libraries in promoting entrepreneurship in their communities. And I believe libraries can help advance equity or community economic development by increasing support for business owners and entrepreneurs, and in particularly even underserved community and women, minority, immigrant, and veterans communities. This Census Business Builder data tool were designed to support that goal. Now, CBB, Census Business Builder, has been a trusted source for many business owners and economic development programs. It has 2 versions, a small business and regional analyst version. And the small business version is designed mainly for those who are interested in opening new or expanding their existing businesses. And it helps to explore one industry at a time, while the regional analyst version helps to understand a fuller set of industries and business in a larger multi-geographic area. Accessing the CBB is simple and easy. First, you just select a type of business. For example, I select libraries and archives as my search category for today, for the sake of today's presentation, and my location in the state of Florida, our wonderful partners. And I will be, and then I enter the search categories and the location, and then I will be presented with a map of Florida and some key data at the bottom left data panel. And you can expand this panel to get more information. And then you can select more variables to see the map views, mostly presenting business data or demographics data, that your business is targeting. And then finally, you can create a full report to get a complete set of data, information on your potential customers, on the business environment, the competition, the consumer standing, and so on and so forth. There's another tool that I thought also useful for libraries. It's called the Rome or Census Response Outreach Area Mapper. Now, the Census Bureau created this tool as a way for us to identify and help us to tailor communication and partnership support during the 2020 census. Now, the tool provides key social, economic, and demographic characteristics of the areas, pulling data from the American Community Survey. But I thought this tool is useful even beyond the scope of the 2020 census. For example, your library is considering to allocate more resources to programming, which includes more time spent on community engagement. And so you would want to learn more about the communities that you want to engage. Of course, you can go to data.census.gov to get the data, but I want to bring it up because you can go in here and learn quickly about the communities and to access all the data at one place. And here, for example, I put the thematic map of the Florida by counties, which shows the predicted response rate for the census. So basically, the way to understand this map is the darker the color, the less likely the community or its population to respond to the census. But I want to bring your attention to the upper left. There's a wonderful feature called the open source, where you can overlay other geographic information onto this map. In this case, for example, I searched public libraries and I found some data profile file available on the internet. I select the file and I add it to my map. So I added public libraries file and add its layout to my map. And here I have public libraries show in the yellow dot in relation to the population demographics and the response and the behaviors, and the consumer spending, their media consumption habits, and the mindset, and so on and so forth, all in one place. And that helps me to get a better pictures of the communities that I serve. Then I can zoom in further by city, or by just looking up again using the open source box there, and I just look up for city of Orlando, get the boundary, smash it up, and lay it upon my map. Or I can look it up by commissioner district, for example, if you're working with elected officials. In this case, for example, in the Miami-Dade County, for example. And then here's the wonderful feature about this tool that I can zoom in further to learn more about that neighborhood in my service area. Yeah, for example, I saw a group of dark colors, census tracts. I just zoom in one of them just to learn more about that area. In this case, I just randomly zoom into tract 2003 in Miami-Dade County. I click on the tract and then the data panel appears, from which I learned that more than 36% of the population live under poverty level, and then more than 40% of the population with a high school diploma. And then more than 46% of the population are aged 19 and above to 64 were without health insurance. And then I can go on further and learn more about the community. I really encourage you to go on census.gov and explore this tool. And I'll be happy to provide a separate training on this. Talking about putting everything together at one place, the Census Bureau have responded swiftly to the pandemic. And it is important for librarians to understand how the COVID-19 pandemic have spread across the countries and across your communities, and its potential impacts in our communities on our livelihoods. And you can access individual survey and program, of course, from census.gov. You can go to data.census.gov to access the data. But here I want to bring the COVID Hub here because it's a wonderful place where you can get all the data, relevant data, at one place. And just as the coronavirus pandemic has evolved over time, so is this data hub, and we continue to add more feature and function and data point to help you make decisions. We've been conducting some experimental surveys since April 2020, and realizing that many government agency, organization, libraries, and some other organizations may need that data to make decisions, whether to open school or the county health department, how we're going to implement their vaccine distribution plan or recovery. And now we are into the recovery phase. We added more data on occupation as well. So that help us to understand factors that impact at-risk population. So we added data such as poverty status, population 65 and over, disability. Also, this data also provided here. If you continue to explore this hub, and you can see links to 8 other programs that also help to measure the actual impacts of the pandemic. For example, I can choose to show you the household pulse survey here from the 8 surveys that are listed on that page. I can select, say, Florida for my example, or you can select a major metropolitan area. In this case, I select the state of Florida. And on the left, you can see some major social economic categories that you want to see the data on. And I can click on one of them. You can see the data topic categories, the data presented on the map, also on the chart bar, which also, the data is also being compared to some other geographies. All right, so far so good. Now, the main focus of our presentation today is to explore this wonderful data tool called data.census.gov. Now, it is the Census Bureau primary portal for accessing census data. And you can use the global search, which we created to sort of emulate this kind of Google search experience, just using the Google search, or you can do using the advanced search functions to look for data on topics, or by view data by using the map view, or some specific variables that you want to really narrow down. And then the nice thing is that you can then share and export the table, and even you can copy the table cells and drop it into your Excel. You have the ability to modify and customize the table by using the wonderful functions here at the top of the table. And then here you can also further drill down to the specific geography level of your interest. We use the term neighborhoods or communities a lot, but like I showed you earlier on that census geography hierarchy diagram, there's sometimes you need to understand census terms and be able to translate communities or neighborhoods into census geographies, and you can be able to find the appropriate data for it. Without further ado, let me go live and show you some of the examples, such scenarios in detail. All right. First is to locate the tool on census.gov. So if I go to the census website, census.gov, and then I would then move my cursor, hover my cursor over Explore Data tab, and scroll down and click on Data Tools and Apps. And from Data Tools and App page, I scroll down and select Explore Census Data, which will take me to the data.census.gov landing page. Now, for the sake of time today, I will run over a couple of scenarios, and we'll open the floor for question and answer. All right. Now here, you have an option to use the global search bar, which allows you to make a single search entry. The tool would then search through thousands of data tables and variables and geographies to get the data for you. And often our customers use this function for casual searching or for browsing around. For example, if I want to learn about the educational attainment in the city, I'm going to move to Jacksonville, Florida now. So I would type in educational attainment and followed by the name of the city, Jacksonville, and enter. Because my inquiry wasn't specific, because I just asking about educational attainment, so where at least I was provided at the top and highlight data with a bachelor degree or higher educational attainment for the city of Florida, which is at 29.1%. But right immediately below that, and then I can see that there's an educational attainment and some, I continue to scroll down and I can see that there were about 188 results. And then you can view 93 of which were tables and maps, and then map results, 93 maps and 93 tables. Now, but before we go further explore that educational attainment, I want to bring your attention to the right side of the screen where you see the Jacksonville city profile, and you can click on that and you get a broader view of the data, and then key population, economic, demographics data, the map of the city. And if you continue to scroll down, you get some more data variables on for the city here. And there's a feature here called share and export, and you can share and export that data point. So I really, I think this is a nice feature using the global search, and I look at and just immediately looking at the city profile. Now, or I can go back because I'm just interested in educational attainment only. So I can go back and just select this table, educational attainment, and just to get the educational attainment just for the city of Jacksonville, Florida. And the product I'm looking at is based on the 2019 one-year American Community Survey estimate. So you can see here, if you want to analyze or you learn more about trends and characteristics of the community, and you can go as far as 2010 and can, to access the data. All right. So that's the simple global search feature. Now, of course, the advanced search, however, in my opinion, I think is the best place for librarians to go. So to go back to the advanced search feature, you then click on the census logo on the top left here. It will take you back to the landing page. From here, you can click on advanced search and start conducting your search. This is a step-by-step approach where applying the filter functions, many filters here, you can narrow down your search to specific survey programs, time period, geography, or topic to get to the data that you are interested in. And then you can view the table, create maps, customize, share, and download the results. Now, so I'm going to use the advanced search feature to find data for my community. And I'll start out with some example. So it's best to start out with searching for data profiles. The data profiles cover 4 subject areas: demographic, social, economic, and housing data, available from the American Community Survey and the Decennial Census. And then from the data profile, you get a good overview of the breadth and the depth of the many variables or the types of variables and data topics for a single area. The Decennial Census, keep this in mind also has its own demographic profile, the DP01 table, called the General Demographic and Characteristic Table from the Population Estimate Program, which you can so get, and to get the official intercensual population estimates for your service area. So here, if I want to look up the data profiles, say for the city of Orlando, then I would set using the geography filter to set my geography. I would click on geography for city, and I will then select the place as my geographic level. Narrow down by selecting my state. And here you see all the cities for Florida. I can scroll down or I can click on the magnifying glass here and type Orlando. Here the city of Orlando appears. It seems to be the geography of my choice. I click on the checkbox and you see it drops my selected geographies into my selected filters, or sometimes we also know as the selections box, right? So that's the first step. And then in the search bar on top, here, if you go back to this, and you see a hint here, it say enter a table ID. Then I know the demographic profile that I just mentioned earlier, and then I can enter, say, DP02, for example, and then click search. Here, I'm being presented with table DP02, which is the selected social and characteristic for in the United States. And now United States is being listed by default, but if you click on the table, because I have set my geography at the city of Orlando, so I will get the data for the city of Orlando. All right, and then you can further explore housing characteristics, economic characteristics, using different table name. For example, let me do it another example, DP04, for example. You see that it doesn't give me that result I'm looking for because I want to do it. I want to make that mistake by purpose. So I want to show you that sometimes if you want to start a new search, it is advisable for you to make sure you clear your selection filters. Okay. For example, let me restart again. So just to illustrate another example, this is how you clear your filters. Make sure when you start a new search, make sure that you get your geography corrected, and then you make sure you clear your filters. And this time, maybe let me venture into another search, table DP03, for example, and search. Now I am being presented with a table on economic characteristics for the city of Orlando. Let me move on and a couple more examples. All right, so to start a new search, advanced search, I'm going to clear everything. All right, clear. Right, now, for example, and I can explore the detailed tables from the data set. Sometimes some of you might know it as a summary file that provide the most detail on all topics and geographic areas. If you know all the quick facts table, the profile tables, and geographic comparison table, ranking table are also sourced from the detailed tables. From the search bar, let me see here. For this time, let me travel to my favorite city, Dunedin, if I say it correctly. So I'm going to reset my geography. It's still at the city level, right? For city, I would go to place and then select my state, Florida, and then I'm going to type in the name of my city that I'm interested in, Dunedin. All right, so I got my geographies. Now from here, let's say I want to get more details data for the city, but I don't know what it is yet. I just want to look at the detail tables. And how do I do from here? I got an option. So I can use this search on top, and I can type in detail table here. I'm going to show you how to explore that through the topics function in another example. So for example, if I type in detail tables, and then I'm being presented a detail table on race, and but in this case, I want to know more about the school enrollment by detail of level school, because maybe my library is opening a summer reading program. I'm going to start soon. I want to see what the statistic is like for the age graders and the age group and the statistics for those. So I can just click on that school enrollment details level, and then I click on the table, and I got the table for the city of Dunedin. All right. Let me, for the sake of time, let me do one more. One or maybe two more, and then we'll do the Q&A. Let's see, to start a new search, a new example, because I want to make sure I clear everything. For example, some libraries now have experienced, and I think I read some report which say there are some declines in circulation or overall decline in library usage. Maybe because some of the policy change, or maybe the way people using or using the library or accessing library, or when some report also say that the decline in circulation or library usage may be associated with a decline in employment or poverty or demographic shift. So this time we're gonna learn about, okay, demographic shift or social economic features, characteristics that might be associated with the library usage or decline in circulation in my area. This time, I want to use the topic filters to explore, to get the data. Let me again go to my city, and let me move back to the city of Jacksonville, for example. So Florida, and from here I select my city, Jacksonville. Okay, it drops into my selection box. Again, make sure you use a Microsoft Edge or Chrome. Are the best browser that work optimally with this data tool. And sometimes you see a glitch, or sometimes you click on the checkbox and it's not there. And so make sure you click on the checkbox and make sure your selection is being selected and dropped into the selected filters. Now, and then from here, for geography, let's say I want to see what the poverty rate is, and by exploring the topics area, topic function, filter function here. So I would then determine my geography and go to my topics. And I can see there's an income and poverty categories available. So I'm going to click income and poverty. Now, if you see a checkbox next to the category, that means that's your final option. But if you don't see a checkbox next to it, that means that you can explore further and drill down further. So if I say I click on poverty, and I select now poverty is my final selection, and I click search. The tool then search across the data programs and tables and everything else and pull up the data for me. And it looks interesting, and it looks like this is what I want to know. I mean, I just grab it and go, or I can explore further by click on that table and explore more about the poverty status in my selected geography. How are we doing so far, Nesrin? I think at this point, let me pause here and open the floor for question and answer.
Okay, Lindy, you can go ahead and begin Q&A.
Okay, thank you, An, for that presentation. I continue to be amazed at the wealth of data that the Census Bureau has available. At this time, I'd like to invite Data Dissemination Specialist Monica Dukes to join on as we answer some audience questions from the chat box. Monica?
Thank you, Lindy. So I've been checking the chat and there were a few questions that have come in for today. The first question that I'm going to ask is, when you were presenting information on quick facts, there was a question that says you can have up to 6 topics or facts on quick facts. How do you add additional topics or facts?
We can look at 6 geographies simultaneously. And if you can go back to that slide. Can you forward to the quick facts slide? What I was saying is that you can add 6 geographies and view the data for them side by side. And then in order to view the data, you have to then go to select the geography of your choice, and then it will present more data for that geography. And the next slide. For example, here, so I just randomly pull up data, 6 geographies and put them side by side. And in order for me to view, and then you can see that you can view and compare data across here. Would that answer your question?
Thank you, An. The next question that was asked, and you went over this as well during the presentation, can you tell us more about what a block level is, or block level data?
Think of a block is like a city block that consists of about 400 people or so, and then a couple of blocks, and then make up a block groups, and a block group then nested within a census tract, which is the size of a census tract is about 1,200 to 8,000 people, but the optimal size for a census tract is about 4,000. So to answer it simply, think of a census block, it's like a city block of about 400 people.
Okay, thank you for that response. The next question, how can one access the economic census data?
You can use data.census.gov, the data tool that I just showed you, to access more economic census data. You can also use the Census Business Bureau tool to access more economic data, and some more other business data source and program as well. I would ask you to follow up with me, and maybe we can customize or customize another training for you. And I think you'll be provided with my contact information at the end of this presentation.
Okay, thank you. The next question, when you were demonstrating on data.census.gov, you were utilizing data tables, and you knew the actual table number. What do you suggest someone should do if they do not know the table number for a data profile?
Then I would suggest you using the topics filter that I show in the, I think, third or the fourth example I showed earlier. By using the topics and drill down to the topics, it take you to the table, and then you take note of that table, and you would know whether it's a demographic profile, DP02, DP03, DP01, or DP05. So there are many ways to skin a cat. What I show you, I think what I did was to show you a couple of ways to get to the data. For the short for this this short time.
Thank you. Is there a way to save or favorite a location on data.census.gov?
That is subject to your own interpretation. Census Bureau just present data, and it's up to you then to determine whether it's your favorite or your your most useful or most preferable location.
Okay, next question. When would you use quick facts and when would you use data.census.gov? So how would you decide which tool to use versus the other?
Just quick fact, just like the name implies, you want something quick, and then you get a good overview of everything together in one place. You go to quick facts, from which you then get population estimates, and you get decennial census data there, you get the ACS data there, you get map and charts and bars and everything, the dash view, everything together in one place, and you get it quick. Sometimes business owners, sometimes on the fly, they want to get, or even politicians travel to sometime to make some impromptu speech. They want to pull up some quick data to make an impression on the population they want to address, pull up quick facts, entering the name of the place, and then you make sure that it's more than 5,000 people, and then you pull up and you get a very good overview of that. Data.census.gov, however, help you to drill down further into very specific place or specific data variables that you're looking for, instead of looking at that whole table or look at it too many things at one time.
Okay, thank you. What are the best ways that we can work to help get the word out about the different census surveys and the importance of responding? Do you have suggestions?
Well, similar to the 2020 census, my suggestion is continue to engage with your libraries, of course, and then subscribe to census.gov. Many features, wonderful features. Census Academy, Census Stats for Stories, right? Census Economic Census. A lot of they continue to provide update current story and data days in and days out. And then engaging us. I mean, we can work with you free self-service and anytime, and we can even customize a presentation or a workshop for you. And we have a team. If you see the map earlier of United States earlier with 6 regional census offices across the country, and we have a team of 25 data dissemination specialists serving the country across these regions.
Thank you. The next question is, why does the ACS use estimates? Is there a relationship between ACS estimates and the official counts for the decennial census?
Well, let me say it this way. The decennial census, for example, costs us, the taxpayer, range $10 to $15 billion. The question, naturally, can we afford to run such a huge operation every year? And another way to understand this is that sometimes in statistical science, if you want to know a whole, you take a piece and trying to understand, you study a little piece and then trying to get a understanding of the whole. So that's what the ACS is for. It's a sample, whether it's more current, and then we'll continue to collect data. But then another issue is called the reduce the burden on the respondents. You can, government agency, have the moral responsibility and even the legal responsibility not to put too much pressure or even too much burden on our respondents. The ACS, then just a sample survey, it's smaller in scale compared to the decennial census.
Thank you, An. That was the last question that we'll be taking from the chat on today. I will now turn it back over to the host.
Thank you so much for your time and your attention.
Thank you, An and Monica, for that valuable information. Again, that concludes our Q&A portion. Continuing on what has been discussed, I want to show you some very important resources before you go, because if you enjoyed today's summit, there's a lot more where that came from. There is so much at your fingertips on census.gov's Census Academy page. There, you can find valuable information on data dissemination and training. There are options to request a free data training for your organization, again, free of charge. You can't beat that. You can also receive our data gems, which are short how-to videos aimed at helping you increase your knowledge of census data. And guess what? We can deliver those to your inbox. And you can also gain access to our easy, learn at your own pace tutorials. We really are here for you. You can also interact with our instructors on the webinars. So to expand a little bit more on what I just said, the Census Bureau has a team of specialists who can assist in bringing the world of data to you by providing trainings, workshops, and presentations. Our team offers presentations and trainings tailored to your organization's needs, and they can show you a variety of census data tools, data sets, and programs, both virtually and in person. Please note, in-person data services are currently suspended due to COVID restrictions. Now, let me show you something. As An mentioned, we have several data summits that we are presenting between now and the month of August. You can find all information on the 2021 Data Summit page on census.gov. In the search bar at the top, simply type in 2021 Data Summit Series to land at the page seen on this slide. There are currently 19 options. To view them all, please be sure to click Show More. Look to see which ones suit your needs, and you may register. It's a one-stop shop. Upon availability, you can find the recorded versions of the same 2021 Data Summit Series page. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to know your thoughts on today's program because there is always room for improvement. You can contact your regional office via phone or email, or contact your local partnership specialist. Allow me to share with you some information on our regional offices. The Atlanta Region Office may be contacted by email at atlanta.regional.office@census.gov. And the Chicago Regional Office may be contacted at chicago.regional.office@census.gov. The Denver Regional Office may be contacted by email at denver.regional.office@census.gov. And the Los Angeles Regional Office may be contacted at los.angeles.regional.office@census.gov. The New York Regional Office may be contacted at new.york.regional.office@census.gov. And finally, the Philadelphia Regional Office may be contacted at philadelphia.regional.office@census.gov. Once again, feel free to contact the regional office that handles your state, or as you have been doing over the last year, connect with your local partnership specialist for any of your needs and/or thoughts, and they will share it with us. Thank you so much for joining today's Data Summit on Census Bureau Data for Librarians. I would like to thank Census leadership, our speakers, Joseph Koskovsky, Phyllis Gorshi, and our key presenter, An Nguyen. Our objectives for this summit was to increase awareness of the vast data products available through the U.S. Census Bureau, to be better equipped to utilize some of the free online tools available on census.gov, and to supply you with resources and toolkits to assist with navigating data available through census.gov. Ladies and gentlemen, we encourage you to provide feedback. We encourage you to tell us if you thought we missed something, what you would like to hear more of or less of. We appreciate your feedback so that we can improve future sessions. This concludes today's webinar. As a friendly reminder, please expect a PDF of today's presentation and resource sheet within 2 business days. This webinar was recorded and will be available at a later date. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful afternoon.